Frank, I want to do something a little bit different for this week's podcast because it's been really an awesome, spectacular conference season, right? We had Googleo, we got the builds, we had the dubs, we had a bunch of other things in between there get announced, new releases of .NET 8, previews, a bunch of good stuff. And I feel like we've been touching on some topics. We haven't been following up on those topics as things change and evolve. So I figure we may go back and just kind of do like mini lightning-ish topics, you know what I mean? Like maybe pick 3 or 4 top of mind things that were really on my mind and kind of go from there, because you texted me earlier and you're like, I want to talk about this thing. And I was like, that justifies 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Does that make
You don't think I could talk about it for more than 10 minutes? I'm pretty sure I can talk about it for more than 10 minutes. I see that as a challenge now.
We could, but we specifically we're talking about some new C# 12 features, and Mads and Dustin, which I then went and watched their build the video, because I haven't watched very many videos at all from any of these conferences, some, but not as many as I'd like to. And it was a spectacular session, and I was like, oh, this is great. They had a great demo, better than I could ever do. And I was like, yeah, I want to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about some other things and kind of not tell you what the topics are either. So how do you feel about that?
Pretty good, except you said 3 or 4 things off the top of your mind. I don't keep 3 or 4 things at the top of my mind. I keep like 1. That's enough. That's enough for my mind. But yeah. So I mentioned in an earlier episode that I did manage to watch one video. I've been a little bit terrible conference goer this season. I haven't been watching all the videos, but Mads and Dustin talking about C#. I love languages. I love talking about them on the podcast. So had to do that one. And they had talked about a feature that we already talked about on the podcast, primary constructors, I believe they're called. Is that the right name, James? Primary constructors?
Primary constructors, that is correct. Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
We talked about those a bit, but then they surprised me, all of us, with a new feature that I didn't know they were working on. And it's super cool, and it's so early they don't even have a beta of it or anything like that. Anyway, without further ado, it's collection literals. James, they're finally fixing the collection syntax. If you just want to declare a collection in your code from C#1, they're finally fixing it. You can now use square brackets instead of curly braces. It's a revolution. Square brackets over curly braces. I'm here for it. Are you here for it?
I am here for it, because when I was thinking about the feature, I saw them demo, which was they had this great little small demo, and I'll put a link to the video for everyone. It was a student basically that had a name, an ID, and it had an array of decimals, I guess, at this point, right? And they wanted to change it to a list, and that became very complicated because they had array.empty. They were newing up a new array with the brackets and then the squiggles and putting stuff inside of it. And a lot of things just weren't compatible, and they had to change a bunch of stuff. And actually, lists you can't even do list.empty, like doesn't exist. So you have to like new up a new list. And it's like, wow, what if you could just solve this, Frank? And what if there was just a way for it to figure out what the thing should be? And now there kind of is, right?
There totally is, and like it's such a simple feature. They're just making it so that you can declare collections just like you would as like JavaScript, just using the square brackets and some commas between the items. And it's got more advanced features than that, but we won't get there. But if you think about it, it's actually a really hard implementation because they have to support array, array list. Remember array list? Remember that one? List of T. They got to figure out the T in that list of T. Or what if you have your own collection class? Or what if you have an immutable one that needs to use the builder pattern? And where is that .empty method? Who knows where .empty is on any of these classes? So it's a gorgeous little syntax improvement. It's going to make all the code a little bit shorter. But it's also really kind of cleaning up the house, making sure that all these collections are compatible in a way beyond just the good old IEnumerable and iList interfaces.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because if you're new to C# and .NET in general, you're just like, wow, there's so many like ways to make lists. Just like there's so many lists. There's like, you only mentioned like 5 of them, but there's like 5 billion, right? There's like observables, and there's like you said, immutable and read onlys and this and that, and then the IEnumerables, all this stuff, right? So this really definitely trims it down. Now, the important part is someone still needs to define somewhere what the actual type of it is, right? Like from
Well,
the demo, at least, that's my understanding because they were passing in a list, Frank, of grade
yes.
corrective decimals.
Yes, the 99.999% usage scenario is the compiler is smart. It figures out what type it needs to be, and it calls the most efficient by some. Hopefully, they document all this stuff. It'll say it's going to call these methods on your collection if you support them in order to create that collection. But, but these are crazy C sharp people, and they want to go one step further and do something crazy and support var x equals bracket bracket. Uh-oh.
Mm,
Now what? Wow, what is this thing? Or I should really say like bracket 0123 bracket. So there's no type there. It's a var. It can be any type. So it's a funny thing. I personally don't think they should even bother supporting that. Just pop up a compiler error. But they're crazy and they're like, we're going to solve this. We're going to pick a type and it's going to be the right type. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know how you're ever going to pick that type. But I love that they are committed to this feature getting in, it sounded like. There are a few stumbling blocks, like what the heck do you do with a var?
yeah, that is definitely something that's definitely tricky. I think that the feature all up will help people kind of get into it and just say, hey, listen, there's a simplified way of defining lists of data, right? I mean, that's really
Yeah.
what it is at the end of the day. Like, why do I need to care? Because, so how often am I always like trying to figure out how do I create a dictionary versus like a thing and like, oh, get this thing. And like it's improved, but they're all different. So I always kind of mess it up just in general.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a fairy tale feature at the moment. It's not implemented, but they had to talk about other fairy tale
I
additional
did.
parts of this feature that are super cool. So, if they're going to have the syntax, well, they might as well support this concept of slicing or merging arrays or other collection types together so that you can kind of, like if you're ever trying to like concatenate a bunch of arrays together or a bunch of lists together. Maybe they even have different data types. It's always a little bit awkward to figure out how to get them all together. The syntax also supports the dot 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 syntax from good old pattern matching. But instead of breaking up a list like in pattern matching, it's actually going to build up the list, which will be super cool. I've been using a lot of Python lately, and Python has that feature, and I really like it. And I'm really happy that C Sharp will be probably maybe getting it. It's step 2 on a very long step 1 process.
I feel like they demoed that it was actually at least implemented and working. And I thought that was neat because they had like, here's me defining my collection of something of grades or whatnot of Mads's, and then they did dot dot Dustin dot, or maybe it was dot 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 Dustin dot grades or whatever, and just slice them all together. And I thought that was really neat. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you could jam those all together. I think one thing they showed that did have all the squiggles, definitely not implemented, was like how do you do like a key value? Like, how do I do a string key or whatever? Like, I thought was kind of neat. Like a dictionary. Like, I have a dictionary of
Yeah.
string grade, right? So it could be like biology or math or whatever. And here's my grade for it. That one they quite didn't have in there yet, but also would make some sense because often when you're messing around with dictionaries, even that syntax is a little funky. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of doing a new dictionary and then you got the squiggles and then brackets and assigning it something, and it's improved a
Yeah.
bit, but it's still a little funky.
I totally think they should support dictionaries, though. It's just natural. Those are the two natural data types in programming: lists of things and dictionaries of things. So I think it should be supported nicely. I do have to make a complaint for a feature that is super fairy tale. Um, they did choose square brackets for dictionaries, whereas dictionaries should obviously be curly braces in this case. So now they've gone the wrong direction and we're using the wrong one. But I think the problem is C Sharp already just has curly braces for a million different things, and they just couldn't jam it into the syntax. But I'm gonna post at least one comment saying it'd be nice if these were curly braces and not square brackets for dictionaries.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's super cool. I'm also going to post one last comment. I would like to be able to just put link queries within the square brackets and
Mm.
have it execute the link query and turn it into the correct collection type. Basically, I want like link query coercion, which would be
Mm.
super nice. And I
Well,
always have to like I write this elegant link query and then I have to put these ugly parentheses around it and say like dot to array or dot to list, and I think it's ugly.
well, who's to say that this doesn't already work? Like where you're putting in a GPA, what if you jammed in a link query and then it just returns something and you could do dot dot and do the link query that returns whatever and it just jams it in, right? Who cares?
That would be nice. Got to get my hands on the super pre-alpha release and find out. That would
I,
be great, even if it takes a dot 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 or whatever.
I do really believe that if one of the goals is just to remove the to list, to array, to whatever on link
Yeah,
queries, that's all I actually would want more than, like,
yeah.
because
We should
it's
post
super
that.
annoying. Just this
Yeah,
needs to solve
exactly.
that problem. Solve this ongoing link query from the beginning of time because it is super duper annoying. I agree.
Yeah. And then then it'd be nice because your declarations, you would just have the data type that you want there, the variable name equals, and you get used to just always starting your things with a bracket. And it'd be
Yeah,
nice, beautiful syntax.
I love it.
Anyway, so did I hit 10 minutes? Yeah, I got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
See, that's a good topic.
Let's go on. I will link that video. It's definitely worth watching because there's a bunch of other goodies in there. I do have another topic, but before we go any further, let's thank our good friends over at SyncFusion, sponsor of this week's pod. Listen, we've been talking about SyncFusion for a long, long time. In fact, they were in the .NET expert area at Build. I got to chat with all the amazing folks over at SyncFusion. They have the world's best UI component suite for building powerful web, desktop, mobile apps, and so much more. No matter what you're building, whether it's .NET MAUI, Flutter, Xamarin, UWP, JavaScript, Blazor applications, Angular applications, React, you name it, they got it. They got file formatting, processing, and all this good stuff. So much amazing stuff that's built in. But they also have a new product that's really cool. It has a full API, including .NET API too, which is called Bold Signed by SyncFusion. Basically, think of it like this. Have you ever done like a PDF where you need to have people sign stuff? You need that to be like, a contract. You need to sign it. What if you could have e-signatures online with enterprise grade basically integration into your applications and a full API so you can easily spin it up in seconds? You can do that with BoldSign by SyncFusion. You can learn about all of these amazing products by going to syncfusion.com/merge conflict over there and check out all of their amazing UI components and their other things like BoldSign, which is super duper cool because I've always wanted to figure out how to integrate these types of contracts into my applications because I use them all the time. Well, thanks, SyncFusion, for sponsoring this week's pod. And on to the next topic, Frank.
Well,
Dropped a bunch of stuff if you heard that.
how can I move on? You just reminded me of the vendor expo part of conferences. I miss that, James. I miss the expo part of a good conference. And boy, now they're getting into services. What a crazy world we live in. How crazy.
It was cool because actually at Build, a bunch of the different like partners and sponsors were integrated into the expert area. So you're going around and it's like, it makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, like there was like all these different amazing SyncFusion was in the .NET. Oh, because they have all the .NET controls. That makes sense. It was really cool. So
Hmm.
that was neat. All right, I do have something. I got some feedback, Frank. I got
Oh
feedback.
boy. Okay. You're not making a good feedback face, but I'm going to assume it's the best feedback I've ever heard in my life.
People were like, wow, James, you're really negative on the Apple Vision Pro. Like, wow,
Okay,
James,
look.
like really didn't see that
Ah,
coming.
okay.
You hate the future, James.
Okay. Look, I stopped myself from posting a tweet. So, in your defense, I was about to tweet something and it was going to go something like, I'm having a hard time getting excited about the Apple Vision Pro. So, were they saying you were negative on this podcast? Or were you just being negative Nelly on the internet and
Oh,
other places also?
you know me, Frank. I don't post anything on the internet that isn't just
Good.
pure positivity, aka basically me just retweeting stuff from work, and that's about it. I don't post.
Hmm.
I don't. I
Yeah.
honestly don't use the social platforms for more than engaging with other listeners or folks that have questions or doing stuff. That's really like
Probably
the
healthy.
platform there. Many moons ago, I decided that I wasn't really going to be vocally opinionated on the Twitters. I really haven't. It's very, very minimal. it was more about this podcast specifically in general, and they were kind of
Where you're
in awe.
allowed to be negative. It's a safe place. We create an environment, and look, we're techno enthusiasts. You have to remember we're already at 90% excited. So when James is unexcited, he's still 90% excited because you still like toys, even if you're not going to buy it. You still like it. But in our defense, I said it's just not the device right now. I just don't feel a need for one at
Yeah.
$3,500. If it was $500, I might feel the need for it.
I've had a lot of conversations about it in general. And I will say this, I am still not super crazy excited about the entire space. It's not actually about the Vision Pro at all. I'm just really not excited too much about AR, VR, or MR at all, in my opinion. However, I have had many more conversations. And one thing that I did want to talk about on this podcast specifically with you is you have a game that's in 3D. It's called iCircuit 3D. Like, and you've now had a week to settle in or so, or a few days at least. Like, have you been thinking, like, hey, maybe iCircuit 3D is like the perfect 3D application for a 3D virtual space? I don't create 3D things, Frank. I got out of that game when I got out of game development. All my things are flat and just have numbers on them. I mean, I guess I could have a big, big number that's up here with just your cadence, but still, I wanted to get your thoughts further on if you've been thinking about this.
I have been thinking about it. I think an asteroids game would be much easier, but so when I was building iCircuit 3D, of course I was thinking about AR because ARKit had already come out, and I made a few design decisions a little early on that made AR hard, but I was able to backtrack a few of them, and I was able to like jam it into an AR session. And I tried. I had my phone in front of my face, and I had my finger in the real world, and I was trying to do AR stuff, but it just wasn't a good experience. I could put the circuit
Mm.
on your table. I could do that. That was within my skill set. But the interaction model was awkward. You had the phone in front of your face, you had your finger. Like, I just didn't know how to interact with it. You interact with it on the phone, but then you're losing the AR-ness of it. So that's all to say, the Vision Pro, it could work there pretty well because if they support ARKit and a UIKit app, I'm pretty sure I could get it compiled over there. Might be a little tricky since I'm not sure if Microsoft is going to support it out of the gates really quick. So I'd have to see what's possible on that front. But I do believe that it could happen. The problem is, I'm not sure if I want to spend $3,500 to find out if I can build an interaction model that's going to be any good for it. Plus, iCircuit does best with the student world and all of that. I'm not sure if it'll sell well on there. We don't know about the sales of these things. I guess we just don't know a lot of things, and maybe I shouldn't worry about them then. So all that's to say is I haven't decided, but I have been thinking about it.
I think when it comes to this, I've also gotten a lot of people ask me about different questions if I'm interested in developing for and where I would go. And, I think at least to start, it is sort of very similar to how you would start with anything VR, which is I'm just going to see how things work in the simulator, right? Like, or the emulator, whatever it is in that space in general. So out of the box, kind of run it, kind of play around with it, XYZ, and kind of go from there. And then, what Apple said was that they were actually going to invite developers to come in and test their apps. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm imagining that they really want some showcase applications on it from the jump. And you still have a year on this because you can't even buy it yet, right? So the real question is for you is at this point, they're not even going to let developers spend the $3,500, right? For who knows how long. Maybe they'll have dev kits. I do not know, right? But really, it's like if you started today, would you be able to like sign up? I guess would you have to fly down to Cupertino or something and then actually or drive? You could drive to try it out. As an option. Does that intrigue you as a developer?
So I've done it. This is actually what they did when the Apple Watch was released. The SDK was released first, no hardware. And then out of the blue, I got an email from Apple saying, hey, do you want to come down to Cupertino and play with some Apple Watches? and I had already written a few little apps for it. So I did that, and I literally did drive. I had the Prius at the time, and it had the adaptive cruise control, so it was actually a really nice drive down the West Coast. And I got to hang out at Apple.
Oh,
Went through crazy security and all that kind of stuff. They let like a bunch of us in a room, got to play with the Apple Watches, got to actually plug them in, try out all the apps on it. It was a lot slower than I thought. Like any lab session, we all spent the first 3 hours just trying to get software installed on it. So that was all fun. Would I do that again? So I was debating with myself. I think I would sign up for the lab. Yeah. And if they did allow it, I would probably go. I don't know how they're going to handle it. Like I said, last time it was just out of the blue. It wasn't, there was no sign up process. I'm curious to see how they handle it this time. Uh, and I did get a developer version of the watch, and I honestly can't remember if I paid for it or they gave it to us for free. I don't think they're going to do the same for the Vision Pro, though.
I do not believe so. I don't even know how the HoloLens works specifically for dev kits. I'd have to find someone from one of the advocacy teams that did that, or some page online, or if someone knows, right into the show mergeconflict.fm or hit us up on Twitter if you did like try to get a dev kit early, or like how that worked. I'm not really positive. I think that I'm in the boat of you. Like, I definitely think it'd be really cool to try out some applications, do some stuff. If I had any, I would like to be your um like co-developer. If they do invite you down, then I can just tag along, like, oh, I got to bring
Oh,
James because it's a co-developer, you know what I mean? Like, it's a team member, just saying.
I can't remember if there was a +1 on the invite last time. It was years
Please,
ago now.
please, if so, I'll pay I'll split the trip. There we go.
All
And
right.
I'll
Sounds good.
expense it for business related activities.
Podcast. By the way, you can join the Patreon at any time.
Patreon.com/mergeconflict.fm. Yeah. Okay, cool. This is good to know. I've been thinking about it because I was rewatching some of the videos with my friend who was coming up and driving during the event, so he didn't get to watch it. And they did have, like, things talking about education. But you're right. It's like, unless they really subsidize this in some way or get it into schools, like I don't know if that education is going to jump off that way. But I do think iCircuit 3D would probably be pretty cool. So
It would definitely be an awesome looking and fun app to have on there. Like
yeah.
as long as like you could keep like the virtual table pretty still in front of you and things like that, I think it could be a really fun environment. I could guess I could make the circuit float in front of you also, whatever. But I think of it as on a table would be most interesting. It'd be a great demo. I think, I keep saying I'm not going to buy it, but it's still kind of 50-50 in my head. So we'll see if um, well, like you said, you get it running in the simulator first. If it's any good there, then you got to really make the decision.
Now, talking about software, that would be very interesting to try out. You did. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to talk about this because I don't know what our developer contract actually says. So I'm not going to say
Oh,
too much about it. However, that being said, we were trying to figure out a new date for our recording of said podcast, the one that we're recording right now. And I had to text you and say, sorry, Frank, I can't reschedule because I decided to upgrade my phone to iOS 17, and the calendar app keeps crashing on me when I try to change the event. So I can't do it. Sorry. I had to delete it. So I had to create a new one in general. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll, hold off. And I think I also upgraded to iOS 16 right away. And like everything they say, it's early software and you should not install it on your main phone. So what do? Is I install it directly on my main phone. And, the first few days were a little rough, but I feel like it's kind of coming around as far as some of the features. But it is, I'm not going to say much about it, but it is early. It is early days. And I will just leave it at that because,
newsflash.
newsflash, I've been definitely doing all of the iOS 16 betas and they're completely fine, as after the initial release. But yeah, it's definitely early days. That it's feeling early. So if you're a normal
Wow.
consumer, it's a reason it's a dev build. So
I'm gonna translate everything. This is without much knowledge. I think by early he means his battery life isn't good and things crash and he can't do calendar. Why calendars? Calendars. Why are they changing calendars? Remember when they would change like iCloud syncing between versions? Those were the really rough iOS updates. But I guess what you're describing is roughly normal. It's doing a lot of logging, a lot of logs going everywhere. It's doing a lot of not caching, a lot of caches turned off. Uh, I don't know, man. It's I think like saying comparing it to the iOS 16 betas, that's nothing. Obviously, all the big terrible changes go in between the big major releases. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't judge. I don't know. I just don't do it anymore. Beta 2, beta 3, I'll hop on.
I'm on. I'm all on board. They have made the onboarding experience much easier though. Like in the settings for updates, you can just easily toggle it on. So much better. Thank you, Apple, for making that much choice. I haven't looked at the watch. I do need to get a new watch. I'm going to wait for the Apple event this fall. That is for
How
sure.
about Xcodes? No Vision Pro SDKs, right? In the Xcode, as far as I know.
I haven't seen anything yet. No,
Yeah. So we're all just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. At
that
least
is
they
correct.
announced it.
Yes. All right. I got one last one, at least. I put out a video about this, and I think that it's worth talking about because it's a great developer productivity tool. I about a month or two ago, I talked about something called dev tunnels. You remember dev tunnels, Frank? They talk about dev
No, not
tunnels.
at all. Not at
Okay.
all. What's a dev tunnel, James?
Okay. Dev tunnels was like one of my new favorite features in Visual Studio on Windows. And it's in a whole new area. And we have two things to talk about too. Other things that are new areas too, actually. But the first one is dev tunnels. So dev tunnels is really cool. Imagine you're debugging a web API or a local website and it's running on localhost, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you want to like share that with me. You're like, oh, I want to like, I'm pair programming with you. You're in the office
Ooh.
and I want to like share that with you.
Ooh,
Maybe
are
I
you
guess
gonna
we'd
do
hop on.
naughty internet things are about to happen here? Dev tunnel proxy. I see what's happening. Okay,
So,
I like it.
so let's say like, I want to share with you, but I don't want to like publish it or I don't want to do anything. I don't
No,
want to share screens or
no.
something like that. That's one scenario. Other scenario is, let's say I'm just debugging on an iOS device or Android device or an emulator. You can't really talk to localhost because it's not how it works, right? At all. So you need
I've
to,
tried. I've tried the nastiest network setups you've ever seen to try to get that to work. Nope, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. Now, what if you could take that local host and you could put it online and you could tunnel your way from the internet down into your machine, Frank? There's many products that do this, by the way. But imagine if it was just as easy as debug.
Well,
Just right click
yeah.
debug, create a new dev tunnel. You can make it public, you can make it private, you can make it authenticated, unauthenticated, whatever you want. And it just is there all the time. Wouldn't that be great, Frank?
I say yes, and I want to know how much I'm about to spend on bandwidth because I can shove a lot of things through a tunnel. I would find such a tunnel very useful.
Well, Frank, what if I told you that while that feature was included and is included in Visual Studio 2022, all the additions, what if now it broke away from just Visual Studio? And what if, Frank, it was a command line tool called DevTunnel CLI? And you could do this from Mac, Windows, or PC or
Okay, that is
Linux.
a bit crazy. Okay,
Yes.
I like it. I still want to know who's paying for the bandwidth here, but I love it. Uh, I, I wonder if it's tricky. Does it always use a proxy? I'm just guessing at implementations, people, because this is, I mean, we deal with this all the time as developers, trying to get one machine to talk to another.
Yeah.
Pretty excited. Curious to see what kind of bills I can rack up with it.
Well, I don't think there is any bills because it doesn't cost anything. So
Magic.
magic. Yes, I did a video on this. I'll talk about it, but I think it's something that just to kind of talk about, right? This is great when you're debugging even webhooks or something like that. It is really, really nice. At least right now it's in preview, so at least there's no SLA on it, and I
Mhm.
don't know what features would be on there, but as far as I know, everything that's in there right now is just included out of the box. You can set up ports with IPs. You can make them persistent. Yeah, it's just the relay service. It does everything. It handles it all for you automatically and gives you a cool URL on the internet.
Yeah, I was looking at the cool URL on the internet, so that's a little bit funny. It actually generates a random URL
Mhm.
to represent you on the internet. So I guess that's the easiest way to share. Boy, I have at least 3 local servers running right now. port 8080, 8085, 4000. So I should be tunneling all these puppies on over to you.
Yeah,
This is great. I
do
love
it.
this. This is a great little tool.
All right. Last one for you here. And what you'll get your hands on, you'll let me know how that goes, is if you follow the news this week, or last week, I should say, there's some new enhancements coming to VS Code. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about the news for C# developers? Ba, ba, ba,
Is it
ba.
all AI? I need AI. I need AI chat. I was trying to get the GitHub Copilot chat to install, and I cannot get that stupid extension to work. Everyone,
Oh,
write to me on Twitter and tell me how to do it.
I
Anyway,
have it
what were
in
you saying?
I have it in VS proper, but I don't have it in VS Code. Maybe I do have it in VS Code, but no, it is the C# dev kit. There's many things that happen in the world of C# for VS Code, specifically three things, Frank. First, I want to start off with this: is there was this thing called C# dev kit, but I don't want to go there yet because this is the second layer. The first layer,
Okay.
Frank, is that the C# extension. You know the C# extension inside of VS Code that
I
was
live it and
you
breathe
live
it.
it.
I use it all the days, every day.
What if I told you it was previously powered by OmniSharp? But what if I told you now it is now powered by a new fully open LSP, language service protocol hosting? They've enhanced the performance, extensibility, and the overall entire experience with it and kind of built it from the ground up that you can use sort of anywhere. And that's just updated and ready to go.
I would say I'm super afraid because I hate change, but at the same time, I'm super excited because it's nice to just make it an internal tool. I mean, it was weird that the extension was using an open source project. Great job, open source project. But yeah, I mean, Microsoft writes VS Code. Microsoft writes the C# compiler. Makes a little bit of sense for them to write the language server. So kind of just good to see that they're taking the responsibility for it. I'm a little bit nervous though already. I have like 85% luck with VS Code opening my projects. I'm hoping this one's able to handle my crazy rat's nest of projects and solutions.
So this one, if you just go and flip the bits to the pre-release, it's there. You can go back to the OmniSharp version as well. There's a setting to do that. But this one fully integrates, Roslyn and Razor to give you the rich type information, a whole bunch of other stuff too. So lots of nice features there. Refactoring, code navigation, code completions, Roslyn powers semantic awareness, all sorts of good stuff, right? So it's all available. You can flip it back. All open source, no license change, all as it was, just new goodness from the ground up. So everyone that's been using that, you're good to go. But Frank, there is something else on
One
top
more
of it.
thing.
One more thing.
Okay.
Two more things, actually.
Oh,
One is the C# dev kit extension. Now, this C# dev kit extension builds on top of the C# and includes the C# extension and another extension too that I'll talk about. But it includes a whole bunch of great fundamental things that C# developers are used to inside of Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac inside of VS Code. For example, solution
wait.
management.
I was gonna guess. I was gonna say, is there a solution explorer? Because that's everything.
Yes.
That's what a .NET person wants. We have solution files and project files. I need a thing to let me edit solution files and project files. I know there was an F# one that could do it also, but thank you for
Yes.
finally allowing me to edit and look at solution and project files.
Boom. Yeah. So as solution, it has a native test explorer built right in. It also
That's
has
nice.
templates. So you can just create, and it has template integration. So you can add new projects to existing solutions. So you can just spin them up right inside of it, which is very nice. You don't have to go down to the command line if you don't want to. It'll help you do test discovery and debugging, and does a bunch of other stuff as well, which is really, really cool.
Okay, this is great. Thank you for telling me because I'm going to install it the moment we stop chatting here because I've needed all these features for a while. I'm going to say
Yes.
hashtag finally, but okay. Thank you for making this. And
Now,
I did some of these.
yeah, for F sharp, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, there is also IntelliCode for the C# dev kit. So when you install the C# dev kit, it's going to upgrade your C# extension and additionally give you IntelliCode for C# dev kit, which is going to give you AI powered start and whole line completions, one of my favorite things in the entire world. That's optional. You don't need to install it, but you now get IntelliCode inside of VS Code for C#, which is awesome.
I think I'm a Copilot person, but that's only because I haven't had access to IntelliCode for the last years when everyone else has had access to it. Um, we'll see. I might A/B test them, but for now, I'm going to stay strong as a Copilot person, I think.
Now, I will tell you this much because a lot of people have questions. So this is me like clarifying and doing a podcast, but I'm very excited about this because I've known about it for a long, long time. C Sharp Dev Kit and the IntelliCode for C Sharp Dev Kit, those are closed sources. And so it's closed source, those two. Not the C Sharp extension. That one's open source, still is. No license changes, MIT licensing, all that good stuff. The C Sharp Dev Kit stuff specifically and the IntelliCode for C Sharp Dev Kit are closed source, and they're licensed under the Visual Studio subscription, which means you sign in with your Visual Studio subscription, including Community Edition, which is free. If you make under $1 million, you can just sign on in. Good to go. If you already have VS, it'll give you all that good stuff as well. So there's
you got to give them an email address, basically.
Yeah, got to sign in. So those are the two things, but including Community Edition. So if you
That's great.
are good there, you're good to go. But again, the C Sharp extension built sort of from the ground up there with the LSP stuff, which is really cool. So that's what I got.
I want to complain about having to be signed in, but it seems like every extension I've added to VS Code makes me sign in now. So it's just like, yeah, everyone sign in. When are we going to get single sign on for the internet?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, because I don't think actually you can sign into VS Code, but only to sync your settings and your extensions across. But
it's
I don't know if that's
subscription status.
Yeah, I don't know if like that's used to like auto log in. Like what I would like is like, give me an optional login that can then log into my extensions. That'd be cool.
Yeah, because I'm logged into GitHub. I'm logged into GitHub Copilot. I'm logged into Azure. There's an Azure browser thinger you can get.
Mm-hmm.
You're just logged into all this stuff. So whatever. Yeah. It's just one more.
That's all I got, Frank. I just have some news. There was a lot of news that happened after build. So many things happened this week, Frank, and last week and the whole month before that.
Well, I have to say I was most excited about the thing I discussed.
Of course.
I think the collection literals are just going to be the greatest thing ever. But I love your productivity tips, especially these are good. The Tanor, we should do more shows which are just tips and tricks and tools. I don't know. We should try one of those.
That's what this episode was. If it wasn't for me just talking about the Vision Pro for like 10 minutes for some odd reason.
Complaining.
Yeah, whatever. It's good. People like it. Updates. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's Merge Conflict. If there's other things you want us to talk about or discuss, hit us up at mergeconflict.fm or hit us up on Twitter as well. You can find all that information at mergeconflict.fm. But until next time, this has been another Merge Conflict. I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.